One happy development in recent years is the growing awareness of the contribution of women writers to the development of classic science fiction. Today, writers like Leigh Brackett, C.L. Moore and Andre Norton are fairly well known in genre circles. Readers and explorers of past decades continue to rediscover women writers and hopefully bring their work to greater prominence. Today's focus is on one such writer, Margaret St. Clair. The Ace Doubles line was a long-running and now highly collectible fixture of Western, crime and SF publishing from 1952 to 1978. Published in the unusual dos-a-dos format, they bound together two novels, generally by two different authors. Of the 8 novels that St. Clair published, half saw print in this special format, one of them joined with an early book by Philip K. Dick. Welcome to episode 166, originally published on the 31st of July 2025, an exploration of 4 short novels by a neglected female writer of SF who sought to subvert the genre from within. In 1947, the Writer's Digest published an article whose writer mused, "Why is science fiction fun to write? At first blush it doesn't seem attractive, particularly for a woman." That woman was Margaret St. Clair, who lived from 1911 to 1995. At that time, St. Clair was just starting out in SF. Her first story, Rocket to Limbo, had been published by Fantastic Adventures magazine in November of 1946. By the end of the 40s, she'd published about 30 stories, and in the 1950s would add novels to her repertoire. As Rich Horton has put it, she was one of the more noticeable early women writers of SF, but somehow her profile was a bit lower than those of C.L. Moore, Leigh Brackett and Andre Norton. The back cover blurb applied to St. Clair's novel Sign of the Labrys in 1963 is an unedifying example of the absurd way that women writers of SF could be marketed at that time. Women are closer to the primitive than men. They are conscious of the moon pulls, the earth tides. They possess a buried memory of humankind's obscure and ancient past, which can emerge to uniquely colour and flavour a novel. Such a woman is Margaret St. Clair. She was lightly singled out for this ridiculous description, in part because of her interest in Wicca, the new religious movement into which she was formally initiated together with her husband in 1966. By that time, her career was already entering its final phase. She published no further novels after 1973 and lapsed into relative obscurity. However, St. Clair is again becoming better known as readers of classic SF continue to revisit and explore some of the genre's pioneering women writers. While it's often St. Clair's short fiction which wins the most praise, this particular look at her work focuses instead on 4 of her novels. These 4 were published between 1956 and 1964, all of them acquired by Donald A. Wollheim for the historic and collectible Ace Doubles line. In them, St. Clair imagines 4 very different futures for humankind, taking in androids, plagues, mass deception, and a message from the beginning of time. St. Clair's first Ace Doubles novel was Agent of the Unknown, published in 1956. It was published as part of Ace Double D150, together with The World Jones Made, an early novel by Philip K. Dick. St. Clair's first novel, it was originally published as Vulcan's Dolls in the relatively short-lived magazine Universe Science Fiction in February 1952. It explores mutation, rebellion against an oppressive government, and hidden potentials for humankind. In the far future, Don Haig is an aimless layabout on the little-visited, man-made pleasure planetoid Phaon. He sleeps on a beach and does a little work for local business owners. His discovery of an amazingly lifelike, perpetually crying doll shatters his lazy idyll. The doll has a dangerously magnetic effect on others and connects Don to a clandestine rebel movement rising up against the faraway interplanetary government. In this way, a lowly beach bum is transformed against his will into a participant in a large-scale power game. Don is an amnesiac, and what he doesn't remember about his childhood will prove to be critical. Writing in the Science Fiction Encyclopedia, John Clute called this novel perhaps the definitive St. Clair text, the elements of which generate a sense of extraordinary constriction to which the elegiac conclusion of the tale adds a powerful emotional glow. St. Clair's often blinkered protagonist is far from the traditional science fiction Superman. St. Clair's second novel to be published as an ace double was The Green Queen, also in 1956. It was published as part of ace double D176, together with 3,000 Years by Thomas Calvert McClary. Viridis is an inhospitable planet with an environment poisoned both by radiation and a deadly fungal disease. Enclosed within the protection of a special radiation shield, a highly stratified human colony has been developed. The idle, entitled uppers lord over the impoverished lowers, whose life expectancy is cut dramatically by cruel exploitation and their dependence on contaminated food. Bonar is an upper, a practitioner of mask art, a discipline of large-scale illusion designed to confuse and pacify the lowers. Bonar is inspired to develop an illusion which involves the Green Queen, a sort of messianic figure. This notion soon gets out of control. Bonar's ex-lover, Leaf, takes up the mantle of the Green Queen, stirs up rebellion, and threatens to bring down the radiation shield, and apparently to devastate the colony. This novel was originally published in the March 1955 issue of Universe Science Fiction under the title Mistress of Viridis. For book publication, St. Clair added a prologue, an epilogue, and short framing paragraphs at the beginning of each chapter. The Green Queen plunges immediately and confusingly into its dystopian scenario. St. Clair never fully explains what mask art is, and is similarly vague on the colony's social structure. What the novel does have is an increasingly intriguing climax, as Bonar, an impressively immoral, self-interested protagonist, gets closer to revelations about Viridis and to the true source of his inspiration for the Green Queen. Rich Horton has written that the Green Queen is kind of a mess, but that could have been made pretty good by a strong rewrite, and this is about right. St. Clair's third ace double novel was The Games of Neath, published in 1960. It was published as part of ace double D453, together with The Earth Gods Are Coming by Kenneth Bulmer. Generations ago, a religious minority fled Earth and founded a colony on the distant ocean world of Gwethym. With a population of under 2 million, drawn from a mix of French, Norwegian and Chinese colonists, the planet is largely self-sufficient, but trades valuable silk on the interstellar trade routes. Anassa is a priestess for an unusual local religion. The people of Gwethym essentially crowdsourced ideas for a new goddess, Neath. Not even Anassa believes in this deity, but it serves useful social functions. After the priestess survives an assassination attempt, she sets out with her lover, the pragmatic scientist Wan, to investigate the cause of her would-be killer's frustration. It increasingly appears that Gwethym is the site of an energy leak caused by space warp technology, which has torn the fabric of space-time. Already, the entropic effect is so strong that at the leak's epicenter, ordinary chemical reactions cannot occur. Anassa and Wan are trying to solve this problem when the impossible happens. Neath arrives, her non-existence apparently being no obstacle. Around the time The Games of Neath was published, St. Clair was slowing her previously rapid output of short fiction. Perhaps relatedly, her third novel is stronger than her first two, clearer, more coherent and better paced. Constrained by an ace double word count, St. Clair was not able to fully explore the relationship between faith and science, nor the parallel worlds conceit. This is an effective story, however, one that brings to mind the hole in the ozone layer, not detected until 25 years later, in 1985. The future of Earth cultures also gives the book a distinct feel. Finally, St. Clair's last ace double novel was Message from the Eocene, published in 1964. This was published as Ace Double M105 with St. Clair's collection 3 Worlds of Futurity. St. Clair's fourth novel, Sign of the Labrys, was not published as an ace novel, but was instead put out conventionally by Bantam in 1963. The writer returned to the ace doubles format for a final time in 1964, and in some style. Volume M105 is made up entirely of St. Clair's work. Her fifth novel, Message from the Eocene, is backed with her first short story collection, 3 Worlds of Futurity. This neat arrangement should surely be resurrected by an enterprising publisher today. This is the only one of St. Clair's ace double novels to be set on Earth. The Eocene was a distinct period in geological history, albeit one which was not formalised until a few years after the novel was published in 1969. St. Clair seems to use the term loosely, describing a period billions, not tens of millions, of years ago. In this primordial past, war is raging between factions of an intelligent species. One individual, called of all things Tharg, is entrusted with a unique book and sent to hide it. To his shock, Tharg is hunted not by enemies of his own species, but by the more powerful alien Theia, who he believed to be mythical. He's able to hide the book from them, and their attempt to extract information from him shunts him into a non-corporeal form. Tharg becomes a timeless observer, neither alive nor dead. As millions of years pass, he observes the evolution of humans, and hopes to lead them to the book and its secrets. While St. Clair sets up an interesting structure that involves Tharg trying to communicate with humans in various time periods and locations, including briefly her native Kansas, Message from the Eocene ends abruptly and unsatisfyingly. These 4 novels are more interesting than they are brilliant, and perhaps more interesting when taken as a group. It's important to recall how tight and potentially constricting the ace double format could be. Each of these novels is not much more than 40,000 words, generally the low end of the novel definition today. At times, as in The Green Queen and Message from the Eocene, it feels like St. Clair could have done more with these stories if she just had a larger word count to play with. At the same time, there's something in these books which, as the Science Fiction Encyclopedia puts it, represents a fascinating descent from within the very heart of popular SF. St. Clair's heroes are offbeat figures without special qualifications or powers, who often have little control over or even awareness of the forces surrounding them. Her settings are also unusual. While 3 of these 4 novels are set on very different human colonies, they all subvert the human-centric triumphalism of much mid-20th century SF. With any luck, St. Clair will join the ranks of women writers of classic SF who are quite well known in genre circles. It may well be that her short fiction, including the portion of it credited to the name Idris Seabright, will take the larger share of that new notability. However, these short novels are also key parts of her work and reflect a sizable part of what made Margaret St. Clair a distinctive figure in the science fiction of the 1950s and 1960s. Thanks for listening. For more classic science fiction reviews, visit andyjohnson.xyz. You can also find the show on YouTube and follow updates on Blue Sky. In both cases, just search Classic SF with Andy Johnson. Finally, to get in touch, use the contact form on my site or hit the link in the episode description to send a text message.